Painting on paper, so now let's go, or watercolor painting, so let's go ahead and apply that to digital painting. Here we have our assignment and we have our layers organized. I have a painting layer for each artboard. The painting layer for artboard 1 is titled painting. The painting layer for your ellipse is in artboard number 2, and I'll talk about that one in a second. And I also have texturized paper, so it gives off a more natural look as if we were really painting on watercolor paper. This ellipse is not the nicest with this edge, but you're not going to have something like this for your watercolor project. I'm just putting on a setting that allows you to paint within the circle. But again, you're not going to be using that technique for your project, but it works for this assignment. Let's go ahead and start talking about the actual brushes themselves. So Photoshop has 4 defaulted brushes, groups that are great. There's nothing wrong with them, but we need to get some more sophisticated brushes for this project. So I'm going to go over here to the side and I'm going to get more brushes. This website does not automatically log you in, so you're going to have to go up and sign in, and then you'll find the watercolor option down here. Go ahead and click download. Mine's going to open up right inside of Photoshop, but I have found that if students have never done this before, what will happen is you are forced to choose an application. You're going to choose Photoshop and you're going to click on Photoshop twice. As soon as you do that, it will bounce right into Photoshop and you'll have access to all these brushes. Some of the brushes are erasers, some of them are watercolor brushes, and then down at the bottom you actually have some smudge brushes, which are really nice, which you don't get with traditional watercolor painting. So we'll practice all of these, not all the brushes, but the different categories today. I've also got all of your brushes labeled out here for you, so we're going to use those titles. And make sure that you are in your painting layer. So go to your painting layer. I'm going to grab the paintbrush panel again. If this panel didn't pop up for you, I should have said this earlier, you can go up to Window and go to Brushes and open them up there. Now, I don't want to have to go alphabetically through this list every time I'm looking for a brush, so I'm actually going to go ahead and type in the first name of the brush I'm looking for and select it. Close that, and then I'm going to come over here. The really nice thing about these brushes being designed for you is that they're already set for multiply. We don't want blend mode normal for this one. We're just going to be working in multiply. We're also going to make sure that each time we apply paint, we're switching it down to about 50%. You don't come in hard with bright watercolor unless you're doing very fine end details. So we're going to get in the habit of just starting with a low opacity to begin with. Let's go ahead with our brush, and I'm going to just glide this across. And as I glide, I'm adding layer upon layer, which is exactly what you do in watercolors, and that's why the multiply setting is so nice. So this is kind of a hazy edge, but still soft. Good for washes if you need to do a wash. Clean edge. Let's switch brushes. Let's try that out and see what that does. There's 2 of them. I think one applies it thicker than the other. I'm going to go ahead here and click on the bottom one. It really doesn't matter which one you pick. And then I'm just going to type 50% up at the top for opacity. I'm making my brush larger by using my brackets, so right and left brackets. And you can tell the edge is much cleaner. The color is a little bit stronger, not as hazy. Okay, so good for details. We have an even more detailed brush that comes next. And there's 3 different types. You can choose which one. If you want to do really fine detail, you're probably going to want to switch to this one. This one's a little bit bigger, and then this is going to be the largest of the 3. You can always increase the size, even if the brush comes out a little bit. Oops, undo, 50% opacity. I always seem to forget to do that, but it's so important. All right. This looks a lot like the clean edge brush as far as the application of paint, but it definitely has a hazier edge to it. Okay, let's do the soft wash. I like this one a lot. This is really good for washes if you just need to lay down some basic color. It's got a lot of water. What it looks like it would have a lot of water traditionally. It would be more like a wet on wet situation where your paper would be wet and you'd be applying paint on top. That's nice. The all-purpose, this is completely different. Let's use the same brush. Let's switch to another color and I'll show you why. This is very nice because the all-purpose is a smudge brush. And it's built for watercolor. Okay, notice it smudged it a lot. And the reason that's happening is because my strength of my brush is at 24. So I'm going to go ahead and lower that down. I'm also going to decrease my brush size so that it just touches a very small perimeter of my artboard. So I get a little more. Of a blend. Okay, so good for blending. Okay, let's bounce up to the top. All right, so we're gonna do two different ones. We're gonna start with one color, and I'm gonna go back to using a brighter color. And I'm gonna use my soft wet blend. So I'm gonna have to use my round robin to start. So round robin. And I'm gonna apply my color. I'm gonna go ahead and just do number 2 now, so I don't have to keep switching brushes. Maybe start with a turquoise for this one. And then I'm going to do a soft or softer wet blend. So you can soften. I personally like this better than the all-purpose because I think this one's more designed for watercolor than the other one. It gives it more of a creamier, softer blend. And I think with any blending tool, you have to be super careful that you don't go overboard because you can totally destroy something and make it look mushy. The colors look mushy by creating too much strength. So I would definitely go up to that edge or that setting in the control panel, and I would change the strength because you can see how much more natural this blend looks rather than turning it up to 30. Okay, let's go down to the bottom. This is our last one for Artboard 1, and then I'm going to have another video for Artboard 2. I'm going to switch my brush, and I'm actually just going to take, with the round robin, I'm just going to make one huge color swatch because I want to be able to do 3 different techniques on here. Okay, this is so much fun because this is so much of what we practiced in class, and you can get the same techniques. Okay, you have an alcohol brush. You have a brush that will do the same thing that alcohol does to watercolor paper, and you just dab it onto the top of your paint. It looks like it's doing the same thing real alcohol, rubbing alcohol does to the watercolor paper when you're painting. Okay, there's also a salt brush, but I like this because I cook and I know the different types of salts, and coarse salt's going to be bigger and thicker than littler, finer salt. So depending on what kind of extraction of color you want, you pick that particular salt. So I'm going to choose the coarse to start with, and I'm actually going to make it kind of big so you can see. It's a little sporadic, it's hard to control. But look what it does. You can actually see where the real crystals might have taken away the paint. If you hold it down, it creates more all at once. Okay, the next one we're going to try is the eraser edge. Now, there's a time and a place where you're going to need to use this at 100%, and it's going to take away something very nicely. But what I would suggest you think about when you're using this is using it gradually. So maybe you want to add a highlight somewhere on your flower, but it's not quite as bright as if the opacity was at 100. You could just very easily kind of take out some color if you maybe added too much color in an area. That's an option. There's certainly a reason for having this at 100% and using it like I just did, because you might have a very strong edge that you need to clean up. But just think about the opacity control on this brush when you're using it. Okay, next artboard, we're going to go ahead and focus on blending colors together to get shadow. So make sure you watch part 2.